First of all, welcome to ISME's video series with the HSA on managing stress at work. I am Cáit Lynch. I'm the HR advisor here with ISME, and I am here today with Patricia Murray. Patricia is the Senior Work and Organisational Psychologist with the Health and Safety Authority. Employer stress, I think, is another thing I've seen a lot of in my role, because an awful lot of our members would be, they would be the smaller employer. They might have, 10, 15 employees. So they're taking on, they know their employees personally. They're taking on the worries, the stress that all of those employees have. They're taking on the fact that they're they're partially responsible. Their decisions are going to impact these 10 and 15 people's future, and particularly at the moment they're having to make decisions with no grounding to do it from. So why is it so important for employers and managers to be aware of the stress they're under, and to be aware of the impact that can have on their business as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of employers are people who are entrepreneurial, and let's face it, I mean, your employer members are mostly entrepreneurs who started their own business, or they're in family businesses, or they're, as I said before, they're doers, they're operational, they're getting their hands dirty, they're busy people, and they've gone through a tough time in terms of all aspects of running a business in the last couple of years. So there's, I suppose, there's not just one type in that group, but there's a certain typology around that group. And by definition, they're all employers, so that makes them all at least something in common. They're also conscientious, and they're taking on responsibility for other people's well-being, and that will either sit lightly or heavily on their shoulders. And in my experience, for most employers, it sits heavily. I mean, they're very aware that I've got employees here, and I'm worried about their livelihood. And often, if it's a smaller company, they might be related to some of the employees, or they certainly know them, or if it's in a small town, they know their sister's brother's mother or something. So, there's all these connections that makes it more complicated. And also you'll have the situation whereby you might happen to just like or be more attached to some employees than you are to others. And you might feel then you need to treat everybody the same, but you're drawn towards helping someone out more. So these are all absolutely normal human things. But what often employers like that would say is, I don't have any time for my own stress. I have no time to be stressed. So what they do then is just deny themselves the time to deal with their own stress in order to help others or the business or keep going. And we can all get away with some of that some of the time, and it may well be that 4 times out of 5 just about make it through. But you don't want it to be that the 5th time, because the 5th time then you don't make it through because you haven't given yourself the time. So first of all, I'd say to employers or people really take note of your body and your mind and your sleeping. If you're not sleeping, and if you're eating differently, and you've got gastric issues, and you're falling out with people, and you've got home issues, and you're not taking exercise, and you're kind of looking after yourself side of the world has gone awry, then you really need to think before it's too late. Because once you get into a stress situation, it's nearly too late for you to help yourself. And you could find yourself in a position where you're either maybe having a breakdown, or in a breakdown, or you have to take time out of work, or it's much harder to recover than it is to prevent. So I would say, listen to yourself first and watch your sleeping, your eating, your relating, your exercising, and your rumination. Like thinking during the day. If you're constantly thinking of the problem, 2 things are happening. One is you're reinforcing the connections that are negative about the problem. And 2 is you're thinking in the same way, just over and over again. So you're not actually thinking smart, you're just repeat thinking. So it's like going around the same roundabout. Stop thinking about it and start looking at solutions and think about them. So you're solution focused. Look at your sleeping, your eating, your exercising. Even if you don't want to go to bed earlier, just only buy healthy food and go for some good exercise every day. These are things that a lot of mental health professionals will tell you, even if you think I don't agree with them. They will help you whether you agree with them or not. You don't need to buy into those things for them to just help you. And then I'd say to employers, now look at what the source of your stress is. Sometimes the source of stress is actually avoiding things. Sometimes what we do is we do the things that we like doing, that we're good at doing, and we avoid things that we find difficult and we don't like doing. It could be we're avoiding doing the accounts related or financial side, or we're avoiding doing the HR or personnel side. And the stress of avoidance is actually quite taxing. So whatever you're avoiding, think, okay, I'm going to do the avoided thing on a Tuesday, not a Monday because I want to be able to get into the week nicely, not a Friday because I want to get out of the week nicely, but a Tuesday because I've got high energy then, I'm ready for it. And I'm going to know in advance I've got Tuesday to deal with the difficult thing. So every Tuesday for the next 4 weeks, I'm going to deal with those difficult things. And then slowly you should find yourself managing your stress a little bit better through a mixture of organizing your work, giving yourself more sleeping, proper eating and exercise, and then being aware that you're not relating properly when you're stressed. And what secondary effects of stress is that people try to avoid you. So if you're very stressy, you're talking about negative things, you're talking fast, and you're no time for people, they will eventually start avoiding you. And then you're not only a stressed person, you're an isolated stressed person. So you need people. Keep in touch with a few people who are good at listening. Tell them about it. If you need to see a GP, do, but talk to someone and try and look at solutions rather than looking at problems.
Absolutely. And how important is, again, you touched on it there, a lot of our members, they are entrepreneurial sorts. They tend to be a little all or nothing. They're putting 100% of themselves into this business. How important is it to have something else, to take time out, to do something totally unconnected and different?
Yeah, it really does sound perfect, but it also depends on the personality type. Ideally, I mean, I think we all know, and not that we all follow the ideal textbook way to do things, but it is much better to always have something that involves exercise and outdoors for us to do every week. And indeed, something that's quite passive, like listening to music or a crossword or reading a book. Ideally, all our lives to be lovely and balanced, but which of us has those perfectly balanced lives? So especially when we're in a very busy, stress time, it's very hard to say to people, do that, because their very problem is they can't do that. So you don't want to start at the end, if you like. You want to start at the beginning and say to people, these baby steps will help you get there, which is the sleeping, eating, exercising. But obviously, in the long run, you do need to look at having some hobbies, is a bit of not quite the word, but other things to do that just take your mind off it. The reason being, research tells us that if you say to someone who's really worried, just relax, it doesn't work because they're really worried. If you say to that person, go out and count the number of birch trees you can see out there and bring back so many leaves from this tree, then they're busy doing that thing. And actually what happens is, while they're doing that, the mind is relaxing from the other busy things. So often doing something different relaxes the mind without us knowing it, because it bypasses our consciousness of doing it. So sometimes it's a good thing to do that. Another thing I think is good for people is to look at their own personality type. There's loads of online tools you can do, which are free. They're not ideal. Some of them aren't perfectly valid and reliable, but they're good proxies. And it's a good idea to find out, are you introvert or extrovert? Are you someone who's very detail oriented or not so detailed? Do you thrive on thinking things through or on feeling things through? So sometimes it's good to just do some kind of online looking and thinking, what kind of personality are you and what do you thrive on and what gives you energy? Because you're not the same as everybody else. We're all different. And it's really good to have a little bit of self-insight. Or even ask people around you, what stresses me? What do you notice about me when I'm stressed and when I'm not stressed? Look at yourself and think, is it Sunday night that you get stressed? Or actually, is it Friday when you've got weekend things to do? So again, try to get some insight into yourself and what makes you feel relaxed and what makes you feel stressed.
Okay. And I suppose one of the questions that gets directed to me, particularly at the moment, is that employers, and again, primarily, our smaller and medium employers, where they are the ones doing the direct dealing with the employees in terms of bringing them back to the workplace, changing the way they've worked for the last year and a half. They're the ones who are dealing with trying to manage the remote teams hands-on. They're the ones who are dealing with all of this, but they're also the ones who are dealing with the accounts, with the finances. They're trying to get funding for their business. They're trying to build up the business. They're trying to recover from a year of being shut. So they're stressed themselves. They're frustrated themselves. They have spent the last year trying to keep the show on the road. And then they have an employee coming to them saying, well, I can see how I'd be 2 times more productive in the office, but I'm really worried about getting on a bus to get there. How do they keep their own feelings in check and deal with that employee fairly without allowing what they're going through to influence it?
Well, I suppose this question could be put to any one of us, really. I mean, it is pertinent at the moment to employers, but it is a question that's really come out from the whole COVID changed world. How do any of us not impose our own worldview or frustrations on the other? Because we're in it together, and to a certain extent, still when we go back to work, it's in it together thing, although more fragmented. So it is a tendency in human nature to kind of project or to impose, our view onto the person that we're dealing with. For the employer, I think the employer should be aided and abetted by having the proper protocols in place and being able to rely on the fact that there is a state protocol, there is public health advice, there is health and safety advice, and there is kind of a system of work to do this. So they can always say to the employee, this is the protocol we have to follow. Like, I didn't make this up, and unfortunately I understand where you're coming from. I see what you mean. These are always good phrases, but you know, my way is going to be this way, and it's in line with the protocol. And I know that's been repeated a lot for us all on TV for the last, 16 months or so. Like, this is how it's going to be. And this is why it's going to be that way, because this is the agreed protocol going forward. And this should have the effect of making all of us as safe as possible. And if someone comes up with something that I might not be safe on the bus or walking or whatever, then the employer has to just say, you can just do what you can do, get into work, get in the bus, using the mask, hand hygiene. If there's a protocol around timings can be changed. Obviously, use of the lift would be something that you'd have a protocol around. But otherwise, they just have to say, within the workplace, this is how it's going to be, and this is why. And you just repeat it. Our hands are tied about that, but this is the way. Can we do something small for you? Could your starting time be changed a little bit to make it easier in the morning, and your end time maybe, taken back a little bit? Would that suit you? Employers can be a little bit flexible if they can, but really, it's about, like, the protocol is the protocol, and we can all have our own opinions, and there's no way you can invalidate a person's opinion. So it's good to say, I hear you, I know what you mean, I understand, it is difficult, but we're going to keep it as safe as possible, and this is why, and this is how, and this is when, the big one.
Absolutely. It's a huge one that I'm getting in. Okay. And then I suppose just to sum up, but again, this is a pretty big topic, so it's a big enough ask, but just to sum up, for employers in managing their own stress, what would be the key takeaways that you would think are important for them?
Well, for employers, the first thing I think is just your own well-being, which I've said many times now, is your physical well-being. Because if your physical well-being is not there, it's very hard to get your head or heart on board. So a little bit of exercise, make yourself do it every evening, a fast walk, sleep, make yourself turn everything off, go to bed at a certain time, turn the machine off, the phone off, and just try to get a nice, quiet, dark room and sleep. And then eating, only buy healthy stuff and have it in the fridge. Don't junk food eat. Just do that, and within a week you should feel a bit better. And then look at yourself. What do you get good energy from, and what do you find stressful? Try and identify them. Days of the week, times of the day. Do stuff in the morning that maybe takes more from you, so the afternoon you've got more relaxing things to do. Try to organize your life to suit your own personality. We all need people. Do you have a social outlet? Can you talk to people about the problem? Do you have people to go running with, or walking with, or talking with, or watch a movie with? And finally, it is really to try and look at what kind of personality am I, and what do I thrive on, and do a little bit of online searching and see if you can find out a little bit. What were you like when you were in school, or when you were teenagers, or in college, and what are you like now? And I mean, are you really being true to who you are yourself, or are you stressing yourself out? And if so, why? And what can you do to move things a little bit, to give yourself a little bit less stress in your life, and a little bit more joy?
Brilliant. I think we could all take a bit from that one. Really good advice. Okay, well, we will end it there. Thank you very much, Patricia, for giving your time and your very valuable insight to this little series that we're running. And we really
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you.
Okay.